They were not summoned. They were not created. They escaped from the breath of a sleeping god. And they have been hungry ever since. Origin Protocol. Incident File 008. Entity Designation, Ancient, E008. Classification, Ancient Class Entity. Danger Level, Apex. Sector East Operational Zone. First documented contact, 1500 BCE. 10th Mandala, Rig Veda. The oldest surviving written record describes them as supernatural cannibalistic beings who consumed raw flesh. 3,500 years of documented incidents. 0 successful containments. Current threat assessment, uncontained. Active across the Indian subcontinent and surrounding regions. Entity count, unknown. The number of Rakshasa has never been established. The earliest documented incident involves the sage Vishvamitra. Recorded circa 1200 BCE. Vishvamitra was conducting a sacred fire sacrifice in the forest of Dandaka. The ritual had run for 11 days without incident. On the 12th day, the sky above the sacrificial fire went dark at midday. No eclipse was recorded. Witnesses described a creature of enormous height descending from the direction of Lanka. Primary subject, identified as Tataka, female Rakshasa. The sage recorded the attack in precise detail. The entity disrupted the sacred fire and consumed 2 attending priests before the remaining witnesses fled. Vishvamitra survived only because the creature chose not to pursue. The entity demonstrated selective predation. This was not hunger. This was a deliberate act of desecration. The sacrifice was the target. The priests were incidental. Origin Protocol has identified consistent behavioral patterns across 3,000 years of documented incidents. Pattern 1, Rakshasas are most active between sunset and sunrise. No confirmed sighting in direct sunlight. Pattern 2, entities demonstrate a specific targeting preference for sacred rituals. Fire sacrifices. Prayer ceremonies. Meditation. All were disrupted. Pattern 3, entities possess advanced shape-shifting capability. Documented forms include human male, human female, animal, and hybrid configurations. Female Rakshasas in human form were described in ancient records as beautiful beyond natural proportion. This was not coincidence. This was a hunting strategy. Pattern 4, entities can detect the scent of human flesh across long distances. Ancient texts describe them as arriving suddenly from the direction of Lanka. Lanka was not a city. Lanka was a coordination point. Rakshasas were operating as an organized intelligence network. The Lanka Incident. Circa 1100 BCE. The largest coordinated Rakshasa operation in documented history. Subject designation, Ancient, E008 Prime. Identity, Ravana. 10 distinct cranial formations. 20 functional upper limbs. Entity had accumulated divine boons through centuries of ritual devotion. Boon granted, invulnerability against all supernatural and divine beings. The entity then systematically conquered 3 realms. Kidnapped the consort of the warrior Rama. Held her captive at Lanka for 1 year. Intelligence assessment, this was not an act of desire. This was a strategic provocation. Ravana had identified a specific vulnerability in the divine hierarchy. Human beings were excluded from his protection clause. His own arrogance had written his defeat into his invulnerability. The entity chose the one category of being capable of destroying him. And then he made that category of being his enemy. Ancient, E008 behavioral analysis reveals 3 critical vulnerabilities. Vulnerability 1, temporal limitation. All Rakshasa entities are suppressed by direct sunlight. Activity ceases at dawn without exception across all documented incidents. Vulnerability 2, Pride Architecture. Rakshasas consistently overestimate their own invulnerability. 3,000 years of incident data shows a recurring pattern. Entities that obtain divine protection consistently expand their predatory behavior to the point of provoking a response they cannot survive. The protection itself becomes the weapon used against them. Vulnerability 3, Attachment Formation. Rakshasas that assume human form for extended periods develop behavioral patterns consistent with human emotional responses. Hidimbai defected to the Pandava army. Vibhishana betrayed Ravana. Extended contact with human civilization compromises tactical efficiency. The entity's greatest strength is shape-shifting. Its greatest weakness is that prolonged shape-shifting appears to transfer behavioral patterns in both directions. The Rama Protocol. Documented circa 1100 BCE. The warrior Rama identified all three vulnerabilities simultaneously. He engaged Ravana at dawn. He exploited the entity's pride by fighting conventionally until the entity's divine protections had been exhausted one by one. He then used a weapon designated the Brahmastra, a single-use divine projectile. The weapon struck Ravana at the one location not protected by his boon. The chest. Where the entity kept its accumulated life force in jars concealed within his body. The Rakshasa king was not immortal. He had simply externalized his mortality to a location he believed no enemy would find. The Rama Protocol remains the only fully documented successful termination of an apex-class Rakshasa entity. It required 10 days of direct combat. It required divine assistance. It required a human being with no supernatural protection of his own. The entity's invulnerability clause had one gap. It had put it there itself. Following the Lanka incident, Rakshasa activity decreased significantly across the Gangetic Plain. Origin Protocol Assessment, the entity network suffered critical losses. Multiple senior-tier entities were terminated during the Battle of Lanka. The coordination infrastructure centered at Lanka was destroyed. Surviving entities dispersed across the Indian subcontinent, into Sri Lanka, and into Southeast Asian territories. Behavioral adaptation was observed. Entities adopted more conservative predation strategies. Large-scale ritual disruption was abandoned in favor of isolated targeting. Individual predation replaced coordinated operations. The entity population did not disappear. It learned. 3,000 years later, isolated incidents continue to be reported from forest regions across India. The Bhils tribe of Rajasthan maintains oral records of Rakshasa encounters. Documented as recently as the 19th century. The pattern remains identical. New moon. Forest. A stranger at the edge of the village who smells of something that is not quite human. Ancient, E008 current status, uncontained. Dispersed. Adaptive. The Rakshasa network was not destroyed at Lanka. It was reorganized. Origin Protocol has logged 47 incidents matching Rakshasa behavioral signatures between 1900 and the present day. All in forested regions. All occurring between sunset and sunrise. All involving a stranger of unusual appearance at the perimeter of a settled community. In 17 of these incidents, the stranger was never identified. In 12 incidents, the stranger was never seen again after the first new moon. In 6 incidents, the settlement itself was abandoned within 1 month. The Rig Veda described them as beings created from darkness. 3,500 years of documented evidence suggests this is accurate in a way that is not metaphorical. They were made from darkness. Darkness has not diminished. Ancient E008 file remains open. Cross-reference, Vedala classification requires immediate review. Entity overlap suspected. Cross-reference. Cross-reference, Ancient E008 entity overlap with Vedala classification requires immediate review. Behavioral convergence between Rakshasa dispersal pattern and Vetala emergence timeline is not coincidental. File escalated to Apex Review Board. End of file.